so we're going to get started. Thank you everyone for attending another version of our Fun Fridays career chat for middle school students. We're very excited. I'm going to introduce Holly O'Brien, who's going to be our moderator for today. She is an NICC success coach in the New Hampton, Turkey Valley area. She's got a wide expertise on helping students find their career path and doing a lot of work-based learning experiences with them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Holly, and she's going to get today's event started.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. As Steph said, it is a Friday, 2 weeks before Christmas, so I think we all have a lot to smile about and enjoy. But we have Matt here from Pikes Peak, and I'm going to let Matt introduce himself.
Thanks, Holly. My name is Matt Tschirgi, and I'm the park manager here at Pikes Peak State Park. I work for the State Parks Bureau in the Department of Natural Resources, or DNR.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to be a part of this Friday career chat. We're going to dive right into kind of the questions that the students have on that worksheet. And the first question is about soft skills. I think that's kind of something that maybe as eighth graders, they're just beginning to learn about, and something as us adults, it's something we need to always continue to work on and improve. Can you list maybe 2 or 3 top soft skills that you think are important in your profession?
Sure, you bet. So the top soft skills would be come to work on time, make sure you're not late to work, work well with others, be a team player, communicate clearly and effectively, and then also don't play with your cell phone. If you're there to do a job, the employers, no matter which job you take, are not hiring you there to mess with your phone and be on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you brought that tidbit in about social media. I think we all live in that world of the different social media bases from Facebook and Instagram, and that it's very important for everyone to remember that what you post could follow you for where you're going, and any employer, they may be looking you up. So just to be really careful and cautious of what you're posting and putting out there for the public eyes to see.
And to be honest, I've done that too. When I have hire seasonal workers, we do check social media to make sure that there's anything wonky going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So now question 2, we just kind of want to learn a little bit more about your education and the training required. When you were in high school, is this where you thought you'd see yourself, or how did you get to that path today?
In high school, I wasn't dead set on doing this for a career. I mean, I've always had an interest in outdoors. I grew up on a farm, hunting, fishing, canoeing, and all that stuff. But I also had an interest in drawing, painting. So when I went to college, I started in art and design through Iowa State. And also through high school, for a job. When I was 16 years old, I got a job at a local park, a tourist park called Spook Cave, and I was a tour guide there. And also that summer, I worked at the Clayton County Conservation Board's youth corps. So they would hire youth to go work on trails and things like that. And then I worked on a farm for several years, and or a couple of years more in high school. And then when I went to college, I went to Iowa State University, and my first year, I was in art and design. And that next summer, I got hired on at Backbone State Park. I don't know if any of you out there have heard of Backbone State Park, but I was hired there, and then I was hooked. I realized at that time that that's what I wanted to do for a career. I just loved being outdoors. So I kept being hired there every summer. They would ask me back the next summer and the next summer. So I worked 4 summers there. And then when I graduated, just 2 months after I graduated college, I was fortunate to be hired at Mines of Spain Recreation Area, which is just outside of Dubuque. And I was shared between that park and McGregor Cave State Park. So I worked there for 2 years, and then Pikes Peak opened up, and I jumped on the chance to come up here because it's closer to my hometown. And Pikes Peak is such a beautiful park, and I've been here ever since. I've been here for over 22 years now. So
Awesome. That is really cool. One thing I forgot to mention to those who are Zooming in, if you have any questions, please put them in the Zoom chat so we can be sure to ask Mike those questions. Now, question 3 is kind of describing the different working environments, but Matt has provided some awesome pictures that Stephanie is going to share with us. So Matt can talk about kind of the different opportunities he has for his working environment.
Sure. So this is a view from our Pikes Peak overlook. That's kind of what our park is known for, is the views of the upper Mississippi River Valley. In the background there, you can see the Mississippi River Bridge that goes over to Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. But it's just such a nice fall picture. And it's kind of neat to see the different seasons in the park throughout the year. So in the winter time, obviously, most of the river's frozen over and everything is still, and you can hear the trains and things real clearly. In the springtime, you get that spring green color. So the seasons are neat to watch over the years. But to answer your question, yeah, the different things that I do. So here's a picture of me with a selfie. Should put my cell phone down. Taking a photo of doing prescribed burning. So the state trains us out in the field. They train us to do these prescribed or intentionally set fires. Fire is an important tool to manage the land. And here, we're doing a prescribed burn at Turkey River Mounds State Preserve. It's one of the state preserves that we manage south of Guttenberg. And, with firefighting, I have to go through the same training that the firefighters like out west, like you see on TV with out in California or Colorado fighting fires. I have to go through that same training for the department for using fire as a tool. And it's one of the fun things of the job that I do. I really like burning. Here's an interpretive program. So in the park, we wear many hats. We have to be a policeman, a firefighter, an educator, plumber, electrician, all those things. And in this particular job, that's not one of our staff. It's actually a partner of ours. But I set up the program. I asked, this is the ranger from Effigy Mounds National Monument, which is just a few miles from us. And we partner with them on different projects and things. And this was before the pandemic. This picture was taken probably 3 or 4 years ago. And we did not have programs this year because of the pandemic. But we line up interpretive programs or nature programs, whether I do them myself or we have other folks come in on different topics. So that's one of the things, one of the many things that we do here. What's the next photo we have? This is the photo of our campground information or registration booth. So we have a pretty popular campground, 70 campsites, electric sites, a shower building, and so forth. And 3/4 of our sites, or 75% of our campsites, are reservable. So people can go online 3 months ahead of time and reserve a specific campsite. Like I want site number 17 as my favorite site, or whatever. So in this booth here is where the roster. I have to have computer skills in my job in order to run the data sheets to print off the list of names. And then I also print off the reservation cards, which go on the campsite post. It has the person's name on it, like this site belongs to this person for this day or weekend. So that information is there. And there's also several brochures, and that's where we post posters for our programs and things in there. And the 2 little flower boxes in front were from our volunteers and friends group. So that's our campground. It does take up a lot of my time, the campground itself, but a lot of people enjoy that camping. Here is a project that we did last year, and we have if anyone's ever been here before, we have a beautiful wooden boardwalk. It's a ½ mile long that goes down to a really beautiful waterfall. And we have 11.5 miles of trails in the park. And this little section, ½ mile, is actually a wooden, as you can see, a wooden boardwalk trail system. But it was first put in over 30 years ago in 1990. And the boards were really rotten. So they've allowed me to hire extra seasonal staff last year to replace the decking on that It took a long time, and it was quite the project, but it looks really beautiful after it was done. And those are some of the seasonal workers that I hire here at the park. This photo is a picture of the inside of our lift station panel. Now, a lift station is a pit that all the sewage runs down into this pit, and we have two grinder pumps that grind up the sewage and pump it to our sewage lagoon. Some state parks that are close to a town just hook up their sewage to the town sewage. But here we're further out from town, so we have to have our own sewage lagoon, and we have to have our own water well too. So those of us in state parks that are out in remote areas, we have to be certified in water and wastewater operator licenses. So I have to go through the training and re-education to keep those licenses up. And this picture is kind of an example of one of the things we deal with in a wastewater situation. Here, if something goes wrong, usually it happens on a holiday weekend, I can open up that panel and get my voltmeter out and try to figure out where the problem is. This was a fun little, kind of sad but fun little thing. We were able to rescue and rehabilitate and release a barred owl that had gotten trapped inside this cistern. So you can see that little square hole, and the owl was trapped down at the bottom of the cistern. The cistern is like an old well back in the day. You can probably see the cast iron pump or the rusty pump behind there. That's how people got their water. They had rainwater collected in this water pit. There was only about 4 inches of water at the bottom of that pit, but that poor owl was stuck. Somehow he got down in there. I don't know if he's going after a mouse or whatever, but I rigged up this catch pole with a little noose, and I got it around his feet, and we got him out, and we took him home and dried him off and gave him nutrition. And later on, we were able to release him. He flew off of our deck. I live here in the park too, by the way. They provide a house for me. So we were able to release him right off of the deck behind our house. So that was kind of a fun little moment. So I thought I'd include that. We don't do that every day, but on occasion, we have to go, there's no wildlife rehabilitator in our area. Some areas of the state, like down by Cedar Rapids or Des Moines, they have special people that are trained to do this. But in our area, we don't have anyone. So like a lot of the local townspeople or friends of mine will call and say, hey, there's this injured animal and there's no one else to do it. So I drop what I'm doing. I go and try to do what I can to rescue that animal.
That actually is a great segue into one of the questions a student asked. What other animals have you helped or seen out on your adventures?
So trying to think of animals that I've helped. Let's see. I know we've seen some odd things. I saw a mountain lion here at the park many years ago. One of my first years here is out mushroom hunting with my dog, and we're real quiet. We were coming over the hill, and there it was. It had a long tail, and everything about it was cat-like, and it ended up, it was a mountain lion. I've seen a rattlesnake before. We do have rattlesnakes here at Pikes Peak. Not very often. I've only seen one once. And there are some up at Yellow River State Forest also. And then of course, there's times when you do the unexpected, I'll be out there shoveling the snow off of the main overlook. There's no one in the park at all, and I can sense something. I turn and there's a bald eagle just feet from my face, just flying. So I just had the opportunity to have incredible moments like that. It makes my job really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. They've also kind of gathered that you wear many hats. They're wondering what your favorite hat is that you wear.
Probably, let me see. So probably wildlife rehabilitator, moments like that. And I did think of another one, thinking of the eagle. There was a partner agency, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This was back when the bald eagles were on the endangered species list. They've actually come back. They've made a comeback and they've delisted them. But it was one of my early years here. They asked me to bird sit an eagle over a weekend once. So I had a bald eagle in my shop, and it had some lead poisoning because lead is toxic to birds. So that was one of the highlights of my career, I guess. And a couple other little highlights I've had. I was able to go up in a plane to survey the park for tree diseases. The Forestry Bureau, the DNR, went up in the plane and they asked me to come along. So that was exciting. Another time I was able to jump in a helicopter with the wildlife biologist and count deer over the park because we were trying to determine how many deer. We knew there was too many, but we needed data to back us up that we needed a special hunt here in the park. So we were up there in a helicopter with this little, like a little clicker like you'd see the umpire has at a ball game that counts. So we were sitting there clicking how many deer that we would count. So that was pretty exciting too, to go up in the plane or helicopter over the park.
Yeah, that's amazing. They had another question. To be a DNR, is it 1 degree or are there a variety of degrees that you can have in order to become a DNR?
It depends on the bureau you're going into. Like if you're going into the Parks Bureau like me, they require, for a manager, they require a 4-year degree in some biology or park related field, or they exchange, years of service. Like if you're working as a seasonal for X amount of years, they'll trade some of that. And then for a park ranger who's law enforcement or park technician, I get park technician is the entry level full-time position for state parks, and they don't necessarily have it on paper that you're required to have a degree. But to be honest, no one's been hired in the last 15 years without one. So a 4-year degree is pretty much the standard to get into the DNR. And then as far as your major, it depends on what field you're going into. The DNR has multiple fields. So there's like the engineering bureau that we're doing a campground upgrade next year. So we've had DNR engineers out here with their transit surveys and trying to figure out where best to put these campsites because campers are getting bigger and bigger. There's other bureaus like the Fisheries Bureau that run hatcheries, or they do special research out on the Mississippi River with nets and electroshocking. If you've ever been excited about that, you see a boat that has 2 electrodes that shock the fish and they float to the top and they measure them and they put them back in the water and they swim away. So the electroshocking kind of stunts the fish a little bit, which is cool. So that's the Wildlife Bureau. There's also like the Law Enforcement Bureau is like your game warden. So if you've ever been out hunting or fishing and been checked for your fishing license or something, it's probably by a conservation officer or a game warden, and that's from that bureau. So just kind of depends on which area of the DNR you want to get into as far as which major you should choose, and that may change as you get older. Some people may start in one bureau and then they're like, oh, I think I want to do this instead, and they'll be able to transfer and go that route also.
Yep, absolutely. So you have lots of training like in the fire and the law department. Do you have to get extra licenses, for example, driving a gator or the tractor?
We don't have extra licenses for driving that type of equipment. They do also require, they're kind of backing off on this because but they have a license, they require us to have a Class B commercial driver's license. So I have a CDL also, so I can drive one of those big semi or a big truck. State parks used to have our own dump trucks and we've used that for different projects, but they've kind of gotten rid of those. And I don't know if they still require that. But as far as driving the gator and things like that, we don't require anything. We do safety trainings on site after you're hired. And the only requirement we have for a seasonal worker, summer worker, they have to be at least 18 years of age, and they have to have a valid driver's license.
Yeah, so you kind of talked about some careers. Could you go in more depth about like the recreational aid, maybe the natural resource technician, some of those other positions?
Sure. So our entry level position into state parks off the street would be your summer worker, seasonal worker. The official title is called recreational aid. And they make, I don't know, it's like $11.40 an hour or something like that. It's better than minimum wage. And like I said, you have to have a driver's license, 18 years old at least. And then I don't think many people have been hired full-time without working at least some experience, either in a state park or county park or something. So then the next level up to get hired on full-time would be a natural resources technician. And a technician is basically an assistant park manager or an assistant ranger. So if there's a state park that has a ranger in it and a technician, the technician is kind of learning from the ranger how to do the job, and then they'll eventually probably, hopefully, promote and become a ranger manager themselves. So the park technician is kind of an entry-level full-time position where you get to really hands-on learn the job better. And then once you're a technician, then you have like 2 routes you can go. So you can become a park manager, which is like what I am. And what I'm drawn to the job, the park manager does a lot of different variety of things. So I juggle the campground reservations. We have a concession, trails, budget, things like that. So I juggle many things. Or you can go the park ranger route, which is law enforcement. And you probably noticed that I have a badge on, and I do have seasonal law enforcement, and I do enforce the DNR laws, and I can write citations, though it's not a big part of my job, and I usually leave that for other folks. And if I have an issue in the park, I just call the sheriff's office or the local town cop, and they'll come up and help me with something. But the park ranger route, you can go, if you're interested in law enforcement, you can go that route too. So those are the different avenues. And then from there, up another step up above us would be district supervisor. Okay, so right now there's across the whole state of Iowa in our state parks bureau, there's probably over 100 full-time staff as far as managers, rangers, technicians. But when you go to the next step up to district supervisor, there's only 5 districts in the state. So there's only 5 positions. So there isn't a lot of opportunity for advancement above this. But if you ask me, I'm happy where I'm at, because that job is totally different than what I'm doing. I mean, I love being outside and cutting trees or doing this and that. But a district supervisor, you're going to be in the office 99% of the time and probably dealing with personnel issues. And it just doesn't. To be honest, they've asked me to put in for the supervisor position before. It's not for me. I'm not interested. And then above that, and if you want to go above supervisor, there's the bureau chief, and there's only one of those. And it's usually appointed by our director.
Okay. That's good to know. Well, I see we are almost at our time. The last thing I just want to ask you, what classes for these high school kids, what would you say are, eighth graders, are good classes for them to take when they're getting into their high school careers? And
Sure. So if you're interested in the DNR, obviously the science classes would be great. The biology, anything you can better understand about sciences, chemistry, physics, things like that. But also don't forget your shop classes like carpentry skills and welding. I'm not sure what they call those classes in your specific schools, but there are times when, like if you saw the picture with the boardwalk, we use carpentry skills and math to figure that stuff out. And, a lot of people, with math, like, well, why do I need that? Why do I need that formulas and all that stuff? I actually use that once in a while. If you have a quick minute, I'll give you an example. There was a time when we had to drill a new well in the park, and we have to be so many feet from cemeteries. It's a state law, and we have burial mounds here, Native American burial mounds. We're trying to figure out the distance, but there's a big giant building in between. But to use that, if you remember the Pythagorean theorem, I knew the right angle, and I was able to get that distance because I knew those 2 other sides of that triangle. So don't discount math altogether. It is helpful, but but getting back to my other thing, the shop classes are really helpful too.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, Matt. This was extremely informative and great information for us to take on to other students. So we appreciate it. The 8th graders, I loved having your questions. They were very intuitive to keep Matt on his toes. So thank you for that. Otherwise, everyone have a great Friday and a happy holiday.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.